Welcome everyone to Midwest Tree ID. On this channel, it is my mission to help you learn an abundance of trees that grow right here in the Midwest, and some key features on how to identify them. There's just one thing to clarify before we begin. We're not going to be throwing hatred or ridiculing any of the species that we're going to be talking about. But we do, however, want to encourage thoughtful conversation in the comments about personal experiences and things like that. Please try to remember that everything has value and that we are here to enjoy nature and everything it has to offer. So without anything else, let's jump right in. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're in Carl Park in Urbana, Illinois, and we are talking about Liriodendron tulipifera. This is the tulip tree or tulip poplar. I don't really like to call it tulip poplar because it is not a poplar and it's not related to poplars. So we're just going to call it the tulip tree. And one of the main reasons it is called tulip tree is because of these flowers right here. I actually managed to get one off this gargantuan sized specimen here. But the flowers themselves are, this one here has a lot of yellow and light greens on it, but you can see the undersides have a lot of orange. And so sometimes they're a little bit more orange than what we're seeing here, but you can really notice them when you kind of look throughout the tree there. Now the leaves strongly resemble maple, strongly, but they almost look like, I almost think they look like cat ears with these little fluffy fluffs on the side. But yeah, two kind of lobes with these other two little smaller lobes on the side. It almost kind of looks like a cat's face, I think. And some of these leaves can be very, very large sometimes as well, in a whole range of sizes, and others obviously can be relatively small. And the stems are going to be more or less a real nice glossy brown on most of these. They're real easy to identify in the winter by their buds. Their buds are very unique. I don't really have a good image of a bud here, but we may be able to show you a bud in a future video. So, well, one more thing about the flowers is inside here is going to be what the seed head forms on. And the seed head is just like a large spiky looking thing, and it consists of a bunch of samaras that break apart and the seed kind of disperses from there. But yeah, so that's a pretty good sized flower, and these are heavily favored by a lot of different pollinators. So let's go ahead and take a look at the bark, and then we'll take a look at the habit and the whole tree itself. Now this is an exceptionally large specimen behind me. Most of them, very rarely do you see them this size. So I'm really interested to showcase this to you. So this tree is so big, I can't even get close enough to really yeah, okay, now I can. But yeah, this is going to be very, very similar to the bark of ash and some of our maples, like Norway maple. Going to have these real deep, deeply cut furrows and fissures, and they're kind of not really flaky, but almost blocky, but they're real streaky. And on smaller specimens, they are much tighter. But this one is such a large tree that these are very, very deep, deeply cut furrows. But oftentimes easy to mistake for ash or Norway maple. Okay, so I pretty much had to stand about a mile away in order to get this whole tree in the shot. I still can't really get it. You can kind of see my tripod right here. Yeah, well, that tripod is about half my height, so you can get a good feeling of how big this tree is. Tulip tree is definitely one of our larger native trees, and pretty fast growing as well. So they can get this size relatively quickly. I mean, this is still an old tree, but they can get big pretty quick. But you can see tulip trees reach heights of 80, 90 feet easy. And the spread is often not ridiculous compared to its height. You can usually see this one here has probably got a good spread of about 50 feet. And that's not really what I would say typical, but large old specimens like this, that is definitely possible. Typically, you see a spread of about 25 to 30 feet, maybe even 40 feet. And as you can see, it is very, it can be quite dense. And this, most tulip trees that you see in their youth are going to be much more conical and pyramidal, but with this one being so old, it has really rounded out and kind of has a little bit of an unusual habit there. So the tulip tree is often considered native to most of the Midwest. However, I actually did a fair amount of research on this to really make sure, because tulip tree is actually not native right here in central Illinois. It is actually native to the southeastern parts of the state, and even getting a little further down into Indiana and some of the states out that way. That actually kind of surprised me. I really thought it was considered more native here, but it, you know, it's native enough, I guess. But it can still be marketed in nurseries as a native tree, despite that it's not a full-blown native right here. Yeah, very, very common to find tulip trees these days in the landscape. I'm guessing that back when this guy was planted, it probably was not overly common to find, because I've only seen a small handful of tulip trees around that are even close to this size, and I've probably seen some that were bigger, but it's still pretty uncommon. But they do make for a really nice lawn tree. The root systems are really not aggressive. They can self-seed a little bit in the landscape, but you know, that's what we call nature. That they do that. Trees do that. All plants do that. So it's not really anything to be too concerned about. But yeah, they do make for a really nice focal point in a landscape, and they're great for parks just like this. But you're starting to see them being used quite heavily these days, and I'd say that's a pretty welcome addition to the landscape around here. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Be sure to like and subscribe.